Hi there, Humanities. Today I'm going to share with you my creative project. It is a short story. Um, Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the group presentation, so this is going to be done via YouTube. But please join me as I share my story. Here we go. A mistake, another huge mistake. Sarah inwardly groaned as she watched Jerry stuff the last of his second donut between his moist lips. 4 days into an interminable 6-day tour of Yellowstone National Park, it was intended to be a last-ditch effort to rediscover some faint trace of what they had once had, and Sarah felt that if she had to spend one more minute, one more second, with this person who seemed more like a slightly repulsive stranger than the man she had shared the past 20 years, 3 children, and all the details that go along with both, that she would literally rather die. She was overcome with a need to get away from him before she said or did something that would be against the spirit with which the trip was intended. She might say something that could not unsay. He might glance over at her, not that he had looked at her once so far today, but it could happen, and see the look of disgust on her face, and the decision would be made for her. He would know what she knew, and their marriage would come to an abrupt end 2,000 miles from home. The thought made her suddenly envision herself, with perfect clarity, taking the tire iron from the back of the trunk and swiftly swinging it at Jerry's temple until his brain splattered forth, speckling the immaculate interior roof of the Scion boxcar that had the words Progressive Insurance splashed on the side doors. Jerry was never one to spend his own money driving the family's more comfortable Dodge Caravan when he could get away with driving his company car, even though the Caravan would have definitely been more comfortable and roomy on a weekend-long road trip. Smacking his lips and wiping a few stray crumbs of sugar glaze from his stout belly, Jerry snapped the buckle on the seatbelt, turned the key, and eased the car into reverse. Without looking behind him, he backed out of the parking spot at the Old Faithful Inn parking lot and steered toward the exit. Out of the habit, and because Sarah knew that Jerry looked behind him when he backed out, Sarah glanced at the side mirror to make sure the coast was clear. How is it that he never backs into another car or a pedestrian, she wondered, shaking her head in carelessness. But he never had, and he probably never would, because Jerry was the type of person who always had luck on his side. While Sarah felt that she had to be on constant alert to avoid disaster, Jerry plodded through life without a care in the world. While Sarah worried until frown lines around her mouth were deep like hard drawn wires about bills and children and whether the house could go one more year before being repainted, Jerry just seemed to float oblivious from day to day, confident that any details that needed to be attended to would be taken care of for him, or not taken care of at all. It just wouldn't matter. How about we check those thermal features? Jerry asked, and unexpectedly looked over and placed a hand on her thigh. Sarah stared down at the hand on her leg. It was at the same time as familiar to her as her own hand, and as out of place as the hand of a stranger, for she had seen the hand so many times, but could not remember the last time that she had felt the touch of that hand anywhere on her body at all. Sarah continued to look down at the hand, noticing the long fingers and the perfectly over fingernails that she had once thought of as both graceful and masculine, like the hands of a musician or an artist, neither of which he was. The fine hairs on her fingers were darker and coarser than she remembered, and his knuckles were slightly swollen and dry, but she was surprised to feel a slight tingling in her leg at his touch. Okay, she mumbled, trying to appear nonchalant, as if it made no difference to her whether they went to the thermal features or did absolutely nothing for the rest of the day. She felt slightly constipated with emotions that she didn't recognize and did not want to acknowledge. She'd become used to feeling closed off and always slightly bitter, and anything else was foreign and unwelcome to her. Something that, if ignored, would surely go away as quickly as it had come on. The sign said Mammoth Thermal Area, 0.5 miles, but traffic had stopped. What must have been 100 rental cars and RVs inched towards the parking area, which was probably capable of accommodating 25 cars. Asian tourists, who clearly drove with a whole different set of etiquette rules in their homeland, pulled quick U-turns, crossing double lines and causing oncoming traffic to brake, shake fists, and curse at the ignorance of foreigners. Determined tourists abandoned vehicles along the shoulder of the road and trudged enthusiastically toward the mud pots and thermal pools, lugging long-lensed cameras, backpacks stuffed with snacks, sunscreen, and tour books, holding to the arms of wayward children. Occasionally, Sarah noticed a sullen teenager sulking along behind his or her family, head bent down into a cell phone, a frowning mouth and squinting eyes betraying boredom at being dragged along on yet another dreaded family vacation. She could not help but smile to herself of the memories of her own children on so many similar vacations. Forced to leave all that was cool to spend time in, oh my God, nature with the family. Sarah and Jerry walked up the boardwalk and through the various bubbling, splattering, and steaming pools of water, absently gazed at them with only a little interest. They'd visited every major thermal feature in the park, and although the pools were still mesmerizing somewhat, with their sulfury-smelling steam clouds billowing forth, they were no longer novel, and the couple toured the area as if it was just one more stop to check off the list before they could finally call it a day. Jerry stopped abruptly in front of a particularly large mud pot, so abruptly that Sarah, who had fallen slightly behind, ran into the back of him. The sign announced that it was Dragon Mouth Mud Pot, and that the internal temperature was 204 degrees. "Push him," a voice from the deepest part of Sarah's brain demanded. "Just one big shove. But make it look like an accident, like you didn't see him and ran right into him, pushing him off the safety of the boardwalk and into the mouth of the dragon." Sarah could practically hear gasps from the onlookers as her husband struggled to regain his footing, but failed and plunged into the lava-like pool, face first. She could imagine him coming to the surface one time, the skin on his face and arms already blistered and separating from the muscle and bone as he fought to paddle towards the side. She could see him pull his weight onto the edge of the pool, only to have it give way beneath his bulk and fling him, backwards this time, into the angry, cursing, and bubbling mud. His expression would be one of shock and disbelief, because he had never had bad luck. Things like this happened to other people. He could not possibly be in this position. Not Jerry. He might even be able to make eye contact with Sarah, and his eyes would plead. "Can't you fix this? Can't you do something?" And she would slowly shake her head and think, "Not this time, dumbass. Not this time." "It's amazing, isn't it?" Jerry's words again, his hand on her, this time on her shoulder, broke her out of her daydream. He looked at her as if waiting for a response. "Do you remember when we went to the Grand Canyon?" That was all he said, but his eyes searched hers as if hoping for something, hoping for some flicker of remembrance, some sort of connection built on many years and many strips and many shared experiences. Some of them exceptional and some of them mundane. "Do you remember how long we stood at the edge of the canyon together and looked down into the vastness? It was crowded there, like it is here, but we felt like the only two people in the world." Were his eyes tearing up just the tiniest bit, becoming red around the edges? Sarah thought that they were, and that she knew that they were when she was his lower lip quiver just the tiniest bit. This confused her. She had just been imagining pushing this man to his death, revealing in the image in her mind. What was wrong with her? What kind of person was she? They had been together so very long. Nothing was interesting and nothing was new. Everything was predictable and everything bored her to tears. How could he be getting emotional right now, in Yellowstone National Park, surrounded by people speaking German and Chinese and Indian and frantically taking pictures to show the folks back home or post to Facebook? When she'd given up trying and given up believing in them, what the hell was happening? "I miss those days, Sarah. I know that I'm not the best husband. I've neglected you and neglected myself, but I'm sorry. I don't want to give up." Sarah looked down at a wad of gum squished into the wood boards between her feet. She felt like she wanted to look at Jerry, like she wanted to test the waters. Maybe. Could they? Could she? But she couldn't pull away from the greenish, crackling blob of gum to meet her husband's gaze. She made up her mind, right? How she could possibly think of changing her mind now. "I know you don't love me, Sarah," Jerry said almost in a whisper, like a little child admitting to some ugly deed. "But I do love you, and I want there to still be an us. I know I've not been around much the last few years, but I want to change that. I want to change a lot of things. I just have not been sure how. Please, will you say try? Can we try to find what we lost?" The sun, which Sarah had not noticed all day, began to feel warm on her shoulders, like a hug, even though they were surrounded by menagerie of people, Sarah felt for an instant as if they were alone. She felt for the very briefest moment like she used to feel, before kids and t-ball and dance classes, before bills and jobs, promotions, before responsibility and laziness came between them like a heavy, dark curtain. Yes, was all she said, and she surprised herself. I think we should do that. That would be nice. And she raised her eyes to meet his for the first time in a long, long time. For the first time in a long time, she noticed again the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, and the sweet way his mouth turned up at the ends, and the slightest hint of a smile. She put her hand in his, and they walked toward the parking lot. Would you like to check out the canyon and see if we can get a dinner reservation at the Lake Inn? Jerry suggested, shyly, like a boy asking a girl on the first date. And she agreed. The smile that had only been a ghost on her lips a moment before became wide and happy. It was a wonderful walk along the edge of the canyon. Jerry and Sarah gazed down hundreds and hundreds of feet into the Yellowstone River below. The rocks, with their red, orange, and brown tints, brought back memories of that long-ago trip to the Grand Canyon, and once again Jerry and Sarah were alone in the throngs of people. Let's get dinner and then get back to the hotel room, Jerry said shyly. Yes, let's, Sarah replied, and gave his big hand a little squeeze. When they got back to the parking lot, Jerry surprised Sarah by stepping to her side of the car and opening the door for her. He must have noticed the look of surprise on her face, because he said, Yeah, I know, but a lot of things are going to change from here on out. As Sarah settled into her seat and reached for her buckle, Jerry got into the driver's seat. This time Sarah had to smile just a little at the familiar way that Jerry threw the car into reverse and backed out of this parking spot. Out of habit, Sarah checked out of her side mirror. Only this time it was not the exit she saw, or more cars, or people. All she saw was vastness. She saw the blue sky and the rocky edge of the canyon as Jerry backed up, and kept backing up, never taking his eyes off his wife, never looking behind to see that they were safe, never knowing until it was much, much too late that he had backed to the edge of the canyon. Not feeling, until it was too late, that the tires of the Scion lost purchase on the pavement and began to slide backwards. And at that point, as they looked into each other's eyes for one last time, they both knew the truth. It was too late after all. That is my short story. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed taking this humanities class. Have a good day.